What is modern art? According to people in the know, it's a very specific quality identified by very specific circumstances in the process of creating that art. However, most people are not in the know. What the overwhelming majority of people in the entire world mean when they use the words modern art, it's art what look like shit made by people who could do better. Now, according to the aforementioned people in the know, I am not allowed to use this definition because then when I say modern art, it would also include postmodern art and intermodern art and abstractivist art and hyperderealized art and other terms that I could also make up. Imagine for a moment an automobile mechanic who tells me that I cannot refer to the concept of a four-wheeled automobile. I have to call them sedans or pickup truck. Except, of course, an automobile mechanic would never do that because automobile mechanics are not pretentious people with a privileged art history education. Not to mention, categories are literally a made-up thing. You can just change them. Now, with that out of the way, why is this pretentious, and why is this not pretentious? Yeah, sure, the second category, which is also current, these are recent pieces of art, not some sort of time before the modernity when art was real and actually good. They are of a higher level of technical sophistication. There is very clearly a greater quality to the craftsmanship displayed. It also represents something as opposed to representing nothing. Except, wait, hang on a second. That isn't the full story. Sure, this stuff isn't up to the same level of craftsmanship, but the artist could probably produce something like this if they actually tried. Well, they'd probably have to, polish up their skills, get back in the game with their heads after potentially decades of, let's be honest, phoning it in on the technical level, but they could get there a lot quicker than you or I could. This also doesn't represent nothing. It represents something or other, and if you are an art history student, you might even know what that is. It's just that if you're not an art history student, you don't know, because what it represents is not on the painting. It's on the Wikipedia page of the painting. That's really the difference. If you want to appreciate what a piece of modern art means, you need to know the context, you need to do research, you need to read the brochure of what the artist says they were trying to tell you. Or, they're promoters or critics who just interpret whatever they personally feel that is into the thing, and then it's seen as gospel because they're critics, so they're better than other people. Here, it's obvious what it's supposed to be. It's literally in the picture. I, as a pleb, look at this, not knowing what the background is, and all I can think is, yeah, it looks cool. It looks good. It's cool. It looks cool. But I'm not getting the full picture, as it were, because the painting is only half of the artwork. The context surrounding the painting is the other half of the artwork. It was drawn by an artist who decided not to do another thing and decided to not do that thing in a particular way for particular reasons. And it's not like we only attach value to the stories of art if it's modern art. The reason the Mona Lisa is this huge thing that everybody wants to see isn't because it's objectively the best painting ever created, is because it was stolen a bunch of times. You know how science nerds make science references that they learned in science school? That's what this is. And there is nothing wrong with this, I claim. But also, and this is true, it's okay for the entire rest of the people in the entire world to not give a fuck. That doesn't make them uncultured or stupid. It makes them people who don't share your interest in that particular hobby. Frankly, there's probably more context to all of these illustrations also, if you know the lore of the individual thing that they were made for. So while it's more accessible to know what it's about, the context is still something that enhances the experience of perceiving the artwork. Which, by the way, illustration is the term that pretentious people came up with to identify a separate category of artwork created by working class artists that isn't used to do tax evasion. Because that is what this also is. Sure, yes, an artist put thought and labor into it, and if I were to talk with the artist about the thing, I would probably immensely enjoy the conversation. But if I were to talk to the promoters, the salespeople, or even worse, the owners of such artwork, I would probably want to murder them. Fine art, modern art, art what means something may have a lot of artistic merit and mean a lot to the artist. But in factual terms, the way it is commodified is purely referential, and the only reason you enjoy it is because you went to art school. It's also a nerdy reference, but it's a nerdy reference to a completely unregulated market where ruthless capitalists use the fruits of the souls of actual real creative people as investments. And of course, sometimes they also donate it to museums for a big fat tax write-off so they can make sure that the hard-earned money that they made extorting cancer patients into buying their overpriced medication doesn't go to building schools. Or, also drug barons, they love to use art as a payment option because the value is much more concentrated than if you have to, put truckloads of cash over the border. And you may go, oh yes, these are things that the art world knows about, and oh, how terrible it is. They're also the thing why this is seen as more legitimate than the other thing. It's purely a class thing. And that becomes so much clearer when you realize that the success of these pieces of art is primarily audience-driven. Sure, they were probably commissioned by some sort of company to sell books or other kinds of wood pulp rectangles, but they are, from the ground up, intended to be appealing to a large group of people. Meanwhile, modern art is restrictive, or should I say, exclusive, because the value of the experience of consuming it is inherently tied to the kind of education that you only get when you don't worry about learning how to do indoor plumbing to pay for your bills living paycheck to paycheck. This is democratic. It is a product made to appeal to regular people. And look, I may sound like I am shitting on high art, and I kind of am, but I'm also really not. I have tremendous respect for these kinds of artists and their stories and their intentions and the artistic merits of the thing, which are there, even if the technical sophistication is usually rather low. Although sometimes, interestingly enough, the technical sophistication is there, but it is made to seem like it is of lower technical sophistication to make some other kind of statement. But you wouldn't know this if you didn't know how art is made. All of that is on purpose. It's interesting. I think they're immensely privileged for being able to do what they are able to do, but I also think everyone should be able to be in that position, and I think they have a legitimate place in society. And frankly, even being a peasant, sometimes I look at them and I have no idea what they mean, and I think, yeah, that looks cool. I like it because it looks cool. What I hate is everyone else involved in this. Especially the attitude of, oh no, the high modern art that lacks technical sophistication is actually better than the art that does not lack in technical sophistication, which is not only a perfect example of upper-class arrogance, it's also a massive cope. Which, yes, artists who make stuff that, as some would rather reductively put it, is of inferior quality, that is what you are putting on the market. In purely market-oriented terms, you are copium merchants. You are selling people the feeling that, yes, they are in fact better than everyone else because they took the time to read the little rectangle of text that's next to the painting. Which, again, anytime an artist is acquiring the bag, that's something I'm happy about. But ultimately, the sales value that is actually appealing is a feeling that you are part of some sort of higher elite that has an insight into the ethereal that the common rabble lacks. Which is interesting because these also are made in a way to make people feel special. They're from Dungeons and Dragons. But of course, one of these two categories is seen as more socially permissive, as more admirable, as more desirable, because it involves the transfer of large sums of money between a very small number of people, as opposed to involving the transfer of large sums of money from a lot of people to a very small number of people. There's nothing special about any of these aside from the fiction that we tell ourselves to make them feel special. In fact, one of the high art ones that I put out, not even a high art thing, it's something I painted many years ago to just fuck around with colors, and I put it through a Photoshop filter. There is nothing wrong with fiction. Fiction is valuable, it can make us feel things, it can expand the horizon of our thinking. But it's not fucking magic. The Gathering, which this very much is over here. I am so sorry. I know that joke is terrible. I knew that joke would be terrible, but when I wrote it, it looked very good on the page, and I am nothing if not a prisoner in a maze of my own design. The point is, neither of these two categories is inherently better than the other. That's it, that's the point. Sure, one of them is more financially valuable, the other one has a higher degree of technical sophistication, but ultimately the experience of art is always subjective and individual to the person experiencing it. And the fact that one of these has a greater air of sophistication solely because of its connotation with being owned and enjoyed by rich people is not only pretentious, it's also classist as fuck. That is the thing that pisses me off about it. And I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one. Thank you very much for watching this video. Like, comment, subscribe, share this to your relevant communities, but do not spam them. To supporting me on Patreon or Subscribestar, buying some of my merchandise or my short story collection. This merchandise also, you know, it's technically sophisticated art. And in that spirit, I used a lot of artwork, and I put the little things in the I tried to do that, but you might not always be able to, like, read them. So I also put a very extensive library of links in the description, and I really encourage you to check out these individual artists. See you around, cunts.